Good morning, Holy Spirit.
Feel that. What do I see? My daughter is around. Harriet, Bamujeko, Avudeko, Kuzo. There is violence, an exchange of tough words, almost fighting, which is going to be the USA, America. Those who are in America, my daughter, Simbwa, and the rest. But Harriet, please, there
will be
violence
in your country. And the root cause, that man,
Donald.
Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip in New York, and tonight, a question of paramount importance to your vote lands at the feet of 9 justices. Donald Trump wants the United States Supreme Court to answer 2 questions, once and for all. 1, did he engage in an insurrection? And 2, is he ineligible to run for president of the United States? Trump's lawyers say that the answer to question 1 is clear and unequivocal. No. Their filing submitted today asserts that what the world witnessed on January 6th was, quote, not insurrection, and President Trump in no way engaged in insurrection. His lawyers write, in the context of the history of violent American political protests, January 6th was not an insurrection. Now read through the document, and it almost sounds like the lawyers lawyered by basically lifting from their own client.
They were there with love in their heart. That was an unbelievable, and it was a beautiful day. And what I was asked to do, I wasn't involved in it very much. I was asked to come in, would I make a speech? I made a speech. I said, walk peacefully and patriotically, many different things.
Question 2 now, is Donald Trump constitutionally even allowed to run? Well, his lawyers answer, without a doubt, the answer is yes. They assert that the president is not an officer of the United States. Now, is that logic or is it logic bending? The Supreme Court now gets to answer that question, and there is a huge need for speed here. Colorado votes on March 5th. And just is Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold. Thank you very much for staying up for us tonight, Secretary of State Griswold. Can you first walk us through what this means for the state of Colorado? If we don't get a ruling by January 5th, in just a couple of days, does that mean Trump remains on the ballot in Colorado, basically no matter what?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. And don't you worry, it's not too late in Colorado. So still plenty of time to talk about this crucial case. The Colorado Supreme Court ruled that Trump engaged in insurrection, and because of that, he was disqualified from the ballot. But they put a caveat into their ruling saying that if the case was appealed to the United States Supreme Court, Trump would be on the ballot until the Supreme Court acted in some way. So as of today, he is on the ballot. I certify the ballot, so basically tell the counties which candidates will be on so that they can print the ballots. But our elections get going pretty quickly. Overseas and military ballots actually go out this month. We have early voting, vote by mail in Colorado, so Coloradans will be voting pretty soon.
And if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the Colorado Supreme Court to remove Trump from the ballot, but his name is still there, what happens then?
Colorado's elections take into account candidates who either drop out of a race when their name is already on the ballot or otherwise unable to be voted on. So in that situation, if voters cast a ballot or a vote for someone who is disqualified, we would not be able to count those votes. I think it's underlines that how unprecedented this situation is. Usually when we have disqualifications arise, it's not with the president. It's not with candidates running for president, because usually candidates running for president don't engage in insurrection and don't have this crucial constitutional question facing their candidacy.
Will be the root cause. All he's fighting for that. By the time he wants, they will take it out. He will never sit on it.
But it will cause confusion, and there will be a lot of violence. the current president.
We begin tonight with new developments in the former president's push to make any criminal charges against him disappear. He'll be in Washington tomorrow in court, by choice, we should add, as a federal appeals panel hears oral arguments on his claim of presidential immunity in the January 6th case. Today, he filed a similar immunity claim on similar state charges in Georgia. Now, if they go his way, especially in the federal case, it could make him and any former president legally unaccountable for any crime they might commit while in office.
They ought to release the J6 hostages. They've suffered enough. They ought to release them. I call them hostages. Some people call them prisoners. I call them hostages. Release the J6 hostages, Joe. Release them, Joe. You can do it real easy, Joe.
They're not hostages, and he knows that. He's certainly done this before, trying to turn convicted violent felons into martyrs. But now, far from condemning him, some Republicans are actually using the same term.
I have concerns about the treatment of January 6 hostages. I have concerns. We have a role in Congress of oversight over our treatments of prisoners.
That was Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, chair of the House Republican Conference, the fourth-ranking Republican in Congress. And that's what political accountability looks like within that party. It's the kind of criminal accountability or lack of it that the former president is asking the courts to give him now. Joining us now, conservative lawyer and Atlantic Monthly contributor George Conway. George, when you hear the former president, first of all, using the term hostages to refer to people who committed crimes on January 6th, what do you think?
No, it's completely obscene. I mean, the notion that these people who tried to overthrow the government at his behest, to try to end constitutional democracy in America, and who are being prosecuted, who are indicted by federal grand juries for their crimes against the United States, to say that they are hostages is just, I mean, definitionally absurd, but just morally obscene. And I just, the notion that people accept that, and that he is not drummed out of public life for saying something like that, and that indeed people like Elise Stefanik parrot his lies is just one more condemnation, self-condemnation of the Republican Party. I just don't know how much lower they can go. Was Donald Trump improperly disqualified? And that's not the normal way you do things. And I think there are a couple of reasons why. And I think the most important reason is that when you ask that question, people say, oh, yeah, he should be allowed on the ballot, because they're not really familiar with the idea that the provision in the Constitution that bars insurrectionists from holding public office. But when you actually break it down to the legal issues and factual issues involved, who's subject to the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, is there some kind of necessity for congressional legislation to enforce it, and did Donald Trump engage in insurrection for purposes of section, he loses when you actually break down the questions, the case into its sub-questions, the way lawyers and judges are supposed to do.
George Conway, appreciate it. Thank you.
Make the president, no matter the fight and the shout. So, abali munseyo, bamula bovuyo, obama twabenjawulo.
Different people.
Mumanye wali yayogera.
Just know there's someone who prophesied.
Waliwo yayogera.
There's
Amina.
someone who's prophesied.
Abaliyo, please tell my daughters, mu states ezenjawulo, that there is violence and exchange of tough words that's going to happen within the superpower countries, basically America, and that's how I wrote it. And the cause is this Trump man is going to cause a lot of insecurity and violence.